So to start off the webinar, some of the different things that we're going to be talking about today are certainly KPIs and which ones matter in our minds and which ones don't. We're also going to be talking about some success stories, some case studies, and different stories that'll help pull all of this together. And one of the first things that I thought about as we started our path down a managed services environment for our customers is about a conversation I had probably 10 years ago with an IT director of a large energy organization. And she was evaluating our team to help potentially replace some of their AV support services. And I was really kind of questioning, well, why would you do that? What's the reason? I mean, we're very excited to work with you, but why do you need to do that? And she realized that the technology worked, but her technicians that were in the rooms supporting these sites, it worked, but she just wasn't sure that the utilization was there. And so these people were actually dedicated to the individual rooms, and they called them pilots at the time. And they would drive the rooms and provide some customer support on presentations. But when there was a hardware failure, those pilots at the time would call Mechdyne and say, we're in the middle of a meeting and this thing stopped working, so we canceled the meeting, and can you guys come and fix it? So they would wait for the break-fix service, and eventually the room would be available again. And, it kind of sounds like a well-run managed service program, doesn't it? It's an efficient response to the customer's needs. The technician was responsive at the time. But in this scenario, the KPIs were also met. So the response time was there, the ticket was open, Mechdyne showed up, the ticket was closed, the time to repair, it was all within line of what a key performance indicator would give us. But what the IT director and I talked about was the lost opportunity because of that technology focus. The KPI stated that the failure needs to be repaired within 48 to 72 hours. And, well, when you've got a lease sale going on, for example, in the oil business, that involves lawyers and finance and VP-level managers. All of those folks were working in the room and had to basically stop working or not be able to use the technology as part of their presentations, which makes it impossible to make a decision, by the way. And that was kind of, the technician would be, well, we can get this done as soon as possible, but that's that. So her frustration and motivation to switch providers was because of the lack of customer service. She needed exceptional customer service people that could take care of their people, and just focusing on technology wasn't enough for her. So we implemented and helped support implement a customer-first managed services plan. We were able to replace or retrain some existing staff. We supported the technology when it failed, and we got the room running in minutes, not days, which increased dramatically the room utilization, which is, of course, critical to their business. And that room increases created the need for more rooms of this type. And as more rooms are added, the direct value for our customer, of course, was huge. And it's made a big impact on their business. They now have 8 of these rooms globally with 6 people taking care of them. And it's a huge win for them. And a lot of the reasons why they were able to make this happen was simply because of room utilization. So why did the original provider deliver these benefits? The technicians were doing exactly what they were asked to do. The reason that they weren't delivering the benefits we were able to is because of their success matrix. Their KPIs stated they needed to have things done in a certain period of time, and they did it. So they felt that things were going well. But the moral of the story is don't always think about technology, think about service. If you measure break fix, then you'll receive technology-type service. If you focus on customer experience, you'll create happy users and reliable technology. I call this holistic superhero service, where the customers come first and we use KPIs that actually mean something. So here's an agenda, or what our agenda is going to look like today. It's a bit of a roadmap to prove that happy customers is going to equal happy equipment. And aligning your KPIs to support will positively impact your bottom line. So we're going to talk about why organizations choose to use managed services. We're going to identify accepted ways of measuring managed services programs' successes. And then we're going to challenge some of those assumptions and demonstrate how taking a people-first approach delivers different results. And lastly, we're going to discuss how the right KPIs can lead to better customer service, extend equipment longevity, and of course, improve some financial performance. So managed services, in this particular case, is one of the biggest one of the biggest goals in outsourcing AV and IT support functions. For the most part, is a financial gain. Many organizations don't want to have to train and work their own team or hire their own technicians and then support their own AV IT support. So frequently it's less expensive and more effective to use a managed services contract than to hire and manage those services internally. And managed services done right frees up your people to focus on the things that they do for your core business. In many cases, AV and IT managed service delivery is a break-fix model where an end user calls on a service technician in some cases or a help desk when something's broken. The technician responds by saying, well, what's broken and how can I help you? Well, the defining moment is right there. Do you focus on the technology or do you focus on the person? And that's where Mechdyne kind of makes a fundamental shift because we focus on the person first. Did you take care of the technology first or your customer? And from there, we can then decide do we need to repair our equipment or repair our people? In most cases, in a technology-first environment, the technician's going to fix equipment, they're going to close the ticket, they're going to move on. And that's a pretty universally accepted IT model, certainly, and works in the AV market as well. The assumption there is that the problem is with the technology. And unfortunately, when organizations use this model, the problem isn't always the technology. In some cases, the problem can be the people. So here's a slide that's going to show you that 62% of meeting room technology problems are caused by user impatience. So these are my did you know slides. So I actually, it's amazing to have real research on some of this. And, it's interesting. Our technical services team is almost about 70 people right now. So I ask a lot of questions. And one of my favorite questions is why? Why do people get impatient? And I think here about this number and the impact that training might have on this. So think about end user confidence in equipment usage and how a confident user might make this number decrease. Would a user who is typically impatient become more patient with the technology if they were confident or if they understood how to use it? So here's a great model of does your model focus on technology first and people second? Or do you focus on your people and supporting, getting them confident, and then worrying about technology? So what would be a great KPI for this one in our case? Number of hours of end user training. The next slide talks about, this is a huge number, 88% of users complain about technology equipment being hard to use. So again, I ask why. Why do 88% of people say this? It's huge. For those of you that are on some big campuses, you might have 5,000, 10,000 people. If you have a 10,000 person campus, you're saying 8,800 people complain that technology is hard to use. 8 out of 10 people say it's hard. And it's an amazingly huge number. But can training solve this? Absolutely it can. It's all about customer confidence. Have you analyzed and looked at your KPIs to see how you could reduce this number? Even 20%. How might a customer service focused team in your environment ease the burden on your technology team? And could that training give you some ambassadors to train others? If you have confident users, can those confident end users work for you and help support your team, but just by showing their friends and colleagues that the systems are working? Here's the last of the percentage slides. 12% of people call IT immediately without trying to solve the problem themselves. Now, obviously, this number is lower than 88 and 62. It doesn't have as big a shock factor, but imagine 12% of your calls that come to your IT department might be people that haven't even tried to look at an alternative or understand that they might be able to support themselves. So think of your organization. If you could reduce this number, if you could reduce 12% of the calls that come to your IT desk, what would happen? When potentially simple questions that users could understand or could deal with themselves, and what would happen? That's potentially a game-changing number for IT departments to reduce ticket calls by 12%. So in all three of these examples, I ask you to think about what it would mean to reduce your incoming questions on room AV technology to your call centers. Would that ease the burden on your technology team? And I'm suspecting that the answer is yes. So KPIs do matter, and here's our approach. So the next three case studies and stories I've got here will kind of walk through our people-first, technology-second approach. And the benefits of a people-first environment extends well beyond knowing that the equipment will need to be fixed. What we find in organizations that use a customer-first approach experience, they have a much bigger increased utilization of equipment. They have client operational burdens that are reduced because they don't have people worrying about end-user complaints, because they can now leave that to the technology experts or the customer-first experts. The continuous improvement that we learn through our KPIs drives knowledge transfer from technology experts to end users who then become confident with their technology. And the dreaded, what if the meeting technology doesn't start, can be alleviated with the confidence that technology through training and quick support is available to them. So reduction in calls, and we talked about that in the 12%, to the AV or IT help desks could be a self-service issue. So when someone's calling in not understanding, or they call immediately, those potentially could be self-service issues that training will help them through. So one of the big things that our clients have really benefited from in our people-first approach is increasing employee efficiency. And if you just take, and we talked about some bigger campuses, assume that you've got a 10,000-person campus and half the people at that campus have a meeting during the day. And I think that's a pretty easy number to think about. That would mean that 5,000 people every day have a meeting. And if you assume that their burdened rate, their cost to the business, is at least $50 per hour, which I think is a pretty fair number, you'd be looking at $41,000 a day that you could save by increasing your teammates, by increasing your employees' efficiency by 10 minutes. So that means that if they have 5 meetings during the day and they spent 10 minutes less in those overall in those 5 meetings, that's that $41,000 number. And so $41,000 a day is a pretty decent number when you look at then working that out for the year to become $9 million. So by shaving 10 minutes per teammate in better meeting utilization and a more efficient, confident users, that's almost, well, it's $9 million. So confidence really does deliver a return on investment. And I think about a case with one of our customers in the UK where they're an automotive manufacturer and they spend a good deal of money on technology so that they can stay at the forefront of innovation and they can stay at the forefront of their designs. And one of the things that this particular customer who's been with us quite a number of years, they've actually recently moved from a break-fix type repair warranty with us to a on-site managed service warranty when they just recently purchased a multi-million-dollar wall for showcasing and road mapping some of their concepts and designs to C-level and high-level managers and their board of directors. So they've got designers who spend thousands and thousands of hours working on something, working on a design, working on what a car might look like, and they have 5 or 10 minutes to show and prove themselves to those very high-level people. So you can imagine how stressful that would be for those folks. And the technology really has to work. So what's interesting is their old model was they would have these exact same types of design reviews, but they had a break-fix environment where the technology would be used, but if something happened, they'd just cancel the meeting and move on. Well, now they have a Mechdyne person available to help get every drop of efficiency from these systems, which gives their organization a very powerful tool. In the days of old, they didn't really see the return on investment because the room utilization wasn't very high, because there was questions sometimes whether those rooms would work, or the people using the room might say, geez, we're having a really high-end event here. Maybe we could go back to the old system of using paper and photographs instead of doing it on the visualization system. Well, having our team support them in a customer-first environment allows us to give them the tools that they need to get all of the return on investment for that tool. It's provided them so much, their team has provided so much feedback on how well the systems work. They're now looking at potentially adding additional people. They're also looking at satellite locations and seeing potentially how they might be able to get the best out of those systems as well. And really the reason they're getting the best out of these systems and the reason why it's becoming such a high energy, high exposure environment for them now is the fact that they're now having people support them in a customer-first environment. And that's a really big aha moment for them to realize that going from a break-fix model to the customer-centric model is it's a huge positive impact on their entire design organization. So management has a direction, and if the technology for that direction isn't adopted, then unfortunately in some cases the direction will fail. So in this case, they're passing with flying colors because they're able to support in a customer-centric environment. So this particular UK-based automotive group story shows that focusing on the people and the goals of the technology, it has really lifted their productivity. So let's switch some gears and run some numbers here. In this next example, it shows customer impacts of costs on equipment. So we tried to put together what we thought was a fair analysis of life of equipment and cost for technology investment. And you should be able to amortize or increase, decrease numbers for your own use in the size of your organization you have. But if you look at your business for a second and question, does your technology work? And the answer is probably. It probably works fine. But when do you know when to upgrade technology? And oftentimes, organizations recognize the life cycle of their equipment based on their budgeting, or they might recognize the life cycle of their equipment based on their user happiness. And if users are frustrated, potentially, they might start to think about changing equipment. So in this particular case, we're looking at a 3-year life of equipment. So the technology works and they're replacing it every 3 years. And we assume that there's a $5 million technology investment, which works out to about $1.6 million per year. And that's in a technology-first environment. We talked earlier about giving you financial gains on having a customer-first type environment. And we look at it this way. If you take that same cost and you say, my users are happy, therefore they don't need to change their equipment, we can now amortize 5 years instead of 3, which means that we're spending $1 million per year and potentially saving $600,000 in this particular example. So if I look at that, and it kind of hits close to home for me, because I know that in our boardroom here in our head office, I know that the projector, for example, is 5 or 6 years old. But one of the reasons why it's still in operation is because it's confidence in our equipment. Our company culture drives us to seek and ask and support our users when they need help. And we train our team to try and self-support as best they can. So for our users, from the ground up, they're very confident to use our boardroom. They can walk in here, use the projector, and it works. So we look at, why would we upgrade this projector? Well, if your users are satisfied and the technology is working, you really can get more from less. People really do prefer to embrace a working technology than having to learn new technology. And unfortunately, many organizations mask an overarching support problem by thinking that new technology is going to increase room utilization. And unfortunately, in many cases, that fails. So having a customer-focused team of experts that can support your users and support them in becoming more confident with their technology really does mean that happy users are going to be happy equipment. So KPIs are obviously important, and we talked at the start about how our KPIs are more important than your KPIs, and of course everyone may want to battle me on that one, and that's fine. But really, at the end of the day, we have established a customer service approach that delivers measurable results, and these are some of the KPIs that you might be familiar with now. And you can see completed requests, response time, peak downtime, time to resolve. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these, but here's the truth. We don't use KPIs like this in our environment. There's maybe a couple there that we think that are important. The reality is that we need to focus on the customer service aspect of what we do as being a primary goal, and the above KPIs are for the most part all about equipment. So our KPI is to focus on people and end users, and that really helps you measure what you need to measure for success. So we have very customer-centric KPIs, and I'm going to walk through a few of our KPIs or how we link some of ours and our philosophy around leading our customers to having success with their equipment. So the first one we've got is Net Promoter Score. Now I call it NPS, so you'll hear me shorten it, but it does mean Net Promoter Score. The reason I have this at the top is because we talk a lot about how important customer service is. So our Net Promoter Score is a very important KPI, and basically it measures the percentage of people willing to recommend your service versus the people who are not willing to recommend your service. So if an end user is satisfied and happy, they're going to spread the word at their site to support the message that happy customers is happy equipment. And I'll go into more detail on the NPS data and information here in a few minutes. The second thing that's important to us is finding, and as you notice here, usage patterns and tracking the room. We like to make, in our databasing, we actually create the room as a user. Many IT organizations are incident-centric, so they track the incident or they track the user. We actually like to track the room so we can understand the room performance, whereby that allows us to identify trends, which then allows us to improve user performance and, again, utilization. By databasing a room and tracking a room as a system, you can then see trends in utilization and equipment performance as a whole versus individual. And these things then expose maintenance and upgrade opportunities, which are huge wins for the organization and huge wins for the users. We successfully use this data in organizations where we are able to provide feedback to the business to say, this stuff works great, we should be using it in other rooms and increasing utilization in those other areas. We also are able to help support the users and allow the users to use technology they understand well, and that then circles back to that $9 million I talked about earlier at larger campuses, where you could be saving huge amounts of dollars by having a team that's well empowered and confident in their technology. Training the user. I've said the word training a lot today, and I will continue to say it. Make a KPI around training. Make sure that your user base is clearly aware of how to use the rooms and they know how to get help. A confident user will embrace the technology and they'll help sell it to the rest of your user base, and this creates increases and creates better utilization and allows people to adapt to the technologies. Response time. This is a KPI that was in the cloud or on that slide earlier. Response time is important. However, responding in such a way that allows you to solve the problem on the first call is absolutely critical. If you can solve, and I know at one of our campuses we're solving upwards of 50% of our calls on the first call, where they don't need to talk to us again because the problem has been resolved. If you can get 30, 50, even 20% of your incidents resolved on a first call, it means that you're actually training the user at the same time. In theory, if you walk a user through a problem and they actually resolve it themselves on the phone with you versus saying, oh, we'll have someone up to the room in 20 minutes, the chances are that user is going to be gone. But if you can get them to resolve an incident over the phone, that will then likely turn them the next time they won't have to call because they understand how to fix it. So having processes in place to allow your team to solve high incident or high response time or initial responses is really important. Another area that's important is training your team. We need to know, you need to know, and your team needs to know what's expected of them. The most confident technology repair guy in the world might be the worst person to go to your room and fix a problem. If you send somebody to a room in a high-pressure environment, a high-pressure situation like you saw at our automotive situation in the UK, they may just go straight to technology and try and fix that problem when it may, in fact, be the user that has an issue. So train your team to know what it means to have a happy customer. Make sure that there's a standard for what you expect, and make sure you follow through with them. One of our core values is around making sure that our people are aware that they are number one. We treat our team well, and we expect a lot from our team, and we expect our team to do the same for our customers. So having trends and detail on failures from your team will also help you get to root issues. These root issues drive back to your change management databases and your knowledge bases, which is a really important piece in an IT environment, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time there's a problem. Lastly, we also want to empower, track, reward our service team for an excellent job done for doing excellent service. That's a really key piece, whether that be a rewards program, whether that be kudos to your team, whether you've got a list on a board somewhere that shows people doing a great job, customers providing feedback to the team on things they've done. All of those things make your team feel like they're a part of something really important, and that's a key piece. So the last thing is just around client interaction reporting. We want to make sure that our clients are able to provide feedback and input back to us, and then that they're able to utilize the technology the best they can, which then instills customer confidence. Really, in the end, we're not saying that we're not saying that KPIs don't mean anything, but there's a clear difference between KPIs that are needed to keep a server room running and a KPI that is to help having happy users and great technology. End users have so many things to do when they run many of these complicated rooms. There's laptop hookups, Apple TV, HDMI, DisplayPort, on and on and on. In some cases, many users don't know the technology, so it's important that we have KPIs that support the customer in training and supporting making sure that they are confident in their technology. All of this is part of a great change management and will certainly drive continuous improvement processes. So here's an example of a system that we supported a customer with at the University of Wyoming, actually. They have a 5-sided cave where they were going to spend they were going to put in a big investment together for this technology. And they really wanted to make sure that they got the full potential out of it. They needed to make sure utilization was high, that they had positive feedback from their teams, that they were able to use this technology across the campus. And there was some concern from them that if they didn't know how to drive these technologies properly, they might not get all of those things, and that might show a poor return on investment to the folks that invested the money in the technology. So we do have an on-site service teammate at the University of Wyoming, and that person really drives that technology and runs the visualization center for them. And his goals and metrics for success, 99% of them are customer-centric. He's become a critical tool for the center. He's able to be a trainer, a technician, a coach, and a champion for the technology, which in turn has dramatically increased the utilization of the center. It decreases the concern of what if it doesn't work, and it allows people to come into the room, rent the space out, show the space, and really have the technology running at factory specifications all the time. He also feeds our quality improvement processes as a customer interaction pro. He really helps us understand, and that drives back through to our capture. We then capture that data, analyze it, and work with the university to make sure that all the things that are happening at the university are driving the university's ability to move forward and fit in with their long-term goals. So, this University of Wyoming example is a great example of high-end visualization. And I know that many of you that are on the call today may not be part of a high-end visualization environment. You may have office spaces and collaborative environment spaces. There's so much technology used nowadays for remote conferencing and webinar technology, so to speak. we have this is our last example of something that may hit home for quite a few of you. And it really makes me smile when I read this story because it's something that happens to all of us. You know, one of the things that happens on a lot of campuses is you have very important people. They're senior level people. They may be C-level. They may be, you know, board of directors in some cases at campuses. And those people, for the most part, are called VIPs. And the question is, well, who's in charge of the VIPs? In most cases, it's not them. It's their admin assistants. And so when rooms are being used and their schedule is being taken up, it's the admin assistants that often have to take care of that schedule, and they're responsible for any delays. And so it really comes back to who's the most demanding person in your organization for technology. And it really isn't the VIP. It ends up being typically their assistant. So when a room doesn't work, their assistant is the one who's on the phone trying to get very fast response. And in a prior model for one particular organization we worked for, they had a IT help center that would take calls, and then they dispatch a technician. And unfortunately, the expectations around how long it would take to restore service would really get people excited pretty quickly because, unfortunately, the IT team might not be able to respond quickly enough, and the assistants trying to get the schedule moving. So it became a battle of, unfortunately, and difficult. So we were brought into a campus where VIP rooms they had designated VIP rooms, and then there were also up to 400 designated VIPs. So we took the time to train the exec assistants to make sure that they were confident and capable with the technology. And we would ask them to notify us proactively to ensure that we were meeting their needs. And in many cases, the past most difficult executive assistants are now huge Mechdyne supporters. And the question is why? Well, because we support them first and the technology second. We didn't wait for a problem. We're proactive in making sure that we were supporting those people. And that really came back to that Net Promoter Score KPI. It's huge for them because they're really getting the benefits of a team of people that are supporting them. So it really does drive us back to the question of what KPIs do matter. And the KPIs that matter really are the ones that are customer-centric. But all of you are going to say, well, what about the other KPIs? And the other key performance indicators that are important can link back to the Net Promoter Score. And one of the things that we do is we actually have several KPIs, and I've got a few here that I'd like to just talk about quickly. One of of course, our first metric that we use, again, is our NPS. And again, it tells us our attractors versus detractors. It is possible to get a negative score. And again, if you want to know more about it, you can Google it. There's lots of information out there on NPS scores. But our score is consistently in the high 70s to mid 80s. And some of you will say, well, what does that mean? Well, it really does provide you, in 70s and 80s, it's a really high NPS. That shows that there are more people who are interested in saying how we're doing a great job versus people that have had a poor experience. The problem with traditional ranking is that when you do a survey, you send it out and you say, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? Or on a scale of 1 to 10, how quickly was your technology repaired? That doesn't really tell you a whole lot, unfortunately, because what I might think is a 5, someone else might think is a 7. Or what I think is a 7, someone else might think is a 10. So the NPS really does, the way that it works, really does help us very clearly understand that we've got attractors towards the things that we're doing and detractors who are people that we need to work with and make sure that they're happy. Resolution on first call. We talked about resolution on first call earlier. And if you can resolve on the first call, you're likely training your end user at the same time. So we talked about people who are stewards of these rooms or people who really can help sell the room and the use and increase utilization. The high initial resolution scores reduce the burden on the in-room support or having to go out to a room. And it also reduces rooms that may potentially be put out of service because the thought is it's not working when in fact it may be fine. Average incident age, this particular one tells us a lot. There is a magic range when your NPS score is very high and you have a decent average incident age. And you can see as your average incident age goes up, in some cases your NPS may go down. And at what point does that threshold make a difference in your organization? I obviously can't tell you what your average incident age should be. I know that we look at ours and track it based on our NPS score, and we know if our NPS score is high and our average incident range is X, that we're probably in a good place. And as our average incident age creeps up, we might see our NPS go down, and then we know that we've got to intervene and take care of some additional things. Deferred ticket age, many of you may not know what a deferred ticket is. Some of you might. We track tickets that are open, but maybe a Band-Aid solution, for example. And that particular Band-Aid solution may be a potential, hopefully short-term, but in some cases could be long-term based on how the technology is working in your room. If a projector failure is going on or a projector may be going out of service from the manufacturer, you may have to put Band-Aids in place. And following your deferred tickets against your NPS may give you a bit of a temperature probe for how your customers are feeling about the technology and how their sensitivity is to having this those temporary fixes in place. So those are 4 KPIs that we use here. And, it is possible, certainly, for standard metrics to be used in conjunction with other customer service type KPIs. We did talk in here as well about having potentially training KPIs. There are so many different KPIs that can be valuable to you. It's just a change in how you want to think about your business, and it's a change in how you look at your technology. I think that certainly there's lots of things here that we could continue to review and go through, but I think I've given a good overview of how we do our business and how we use these NPS scores and customer service type KPIs. So that's all the information I have today, Mandy. Have we had any questions come in?
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. We do have a couple of questions. And again, if you would like to ask a question, please just put it in the chat feature. You will remain muted throughout this. So left-hand side of your screen, please enter a question, and we will get to it as soon as we can. The first question that we had come in is actually kind of a 2-part question. First, it says, tell us more about NPS and how do you do the surveys? The second part says, we find in our organization, our user base says, oh no, not another survey.
Yeah, that's certainly a tough one, and one that we've had to work with a lot of our clients on is because the oh no, not another survey, and it's definitely a problem in some organizations, and one of the reasons why it becomes a problem is because we throw survey data at our customers all the time. And the question is, do we really throw survey data at our customers? We actually ask our customers information, and we'll say to an end user, hey, on a scale of 1, and we talked about this a minute ago, on a scale of 1 to 10, fill these 5 questions out. People check the boxes because it showed up in their email, or they delete the email, and off it goes. Oftentimes, we don't circle back with our end users and tell them the results of the surveys. So that's a problem. I know that we're very selective on our surveys. A closed ticket is typically the trigger, but we do not resurvey somebody more than once a quarter. So maximum number of times a very heavy user of a particular room who uses systems all the time, they're going to get 4 surveys from us per year. And our surveys, we keep them less than 5 questions, and that keeps our feedback response fairly, or a request for feedback pretty reasonable. On a 10,000 person campus, we're doing about 50 NPS surveys a month, and we get a 30 to 40% response, which gives us about 20 to 30 surveys which are filled out. The key is feedback, and we ask to set up a meeting with every detractor to understand specifically what we can improve and help that through our change management process, which drives training and team processes. And when I talk about detractor, that circles back again to the NPS. Again, NPS is a tool that is used to look at attractors to your business and detractors, or people who are not satisfied with your work. And basically, when you take a survey, and we do them on a scale of 1 to 10, but what we do is an attractor is somebody who scores you a 9 or a 10. And a detractor is somebody who scores a 6 or lower. So the 8s and 9s are actually neutral numbers and thrown out. So the NPS score is actually a ratio of detractors to attractors. And it basically will tell us that we're doing we want people who promote our business. So if our score is in the 70 to 80 range, that means that we have a huge number of attractors and a lower number of detractors. Again, with our feedback, with our surveys, we try and connect with folks that are in the detractor category. We'll set up time and discuss specific issues so that we can try and drive our change management process and drive our team training. So that's how we do it. There's lots of ways to do it, but NPS, again, we think is a great way, and hopefully with less frequency and keeping track of who you survey, you can keep that "oh no, not another survey" down.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so I'll go through a couple of these other questions. If we do not get to your question, we will reach out to you directly and have Matt answer that for you. So if you've entered a question and you're worried that we won't get to it, please know that we will reach out to you directly to make sure that that question is answered as well. The next question we have says, you talked about customer-focused tech people. How do you find them?
Well, we can't give away all the secret sauce, but that's a great question. And Mechdyne has a very in-depth hiring process, and we spend a lot of time making sure we're trying to find people that will fit with our customer-centric culture. And it's a bit of proprietary magic, but the real secret for hiring is make sure you hire for attitude and train for success. It really is not easy. I mean, it would be easy to go out there and just find a bunch of technology people and put them into an environment and expect that they're going to fix all of your technology problems. But those are the people that I am concerned a lot about in some cases, because they don't necessarily take that customer-first type of interaction. And so when we hire for attitude, that means that we might hire somebody who has aptitude for technology and is really interested in learning and training, and it makes us able to mold them to what we want versus them taking the things that they've done in the past, which may not be right for our business. So it's not necessarily easy, but it's definitely how we've done it. I encourage people whenever they're looking at bidding or working on managed services bids that it's really important to ask hard questions around hiring processes. How do you hire people? How do you bring people on campus? What type of people do you bring here, and what value will they provide to us? It always scares me when I go into a situation where I'm potentially working with a customer who may be hiring us, and they say, oh, the local provider's got 10 people available to start right away. And I say, well, does that make sense to you? Why would they have that many people just available? And are those people that are available the right people that are going to fit your business? So lots of hard questions around finding tech-focused people that have that customer attitude is great, is important.
Great. Next question. You didn't talk a whole lot about specific KPIs. Are there some that are more important than others?
Well, the short answer is there's a lot that might be important to your organization, and it really depends on the person and the people that pick your specific KPIs. Of course, KPIs matter. I'd be silly to say that. I've got my ITIL foundation. I know KPIs and that key performance indicators do matter. But at the end of the day, it's about making sure that you prioritize, like we do our time. We prioritize our time every day. You have to prioritize your KPIs to the ones that are important and the ones that are going to keep your end user happiness high. Because if you keep your end user happiness high, you go back to that potential of utilizing the rooms better, having your team more active in what they're doing, potentially saving $9 million, and also working on making sure that your team is successful and the technology is successful. So that's really what it's about, is how can you take any of the KPIs that are traditional and figure out how you might be able to link your customers to that.
We'll take this one last question before we wrap up, and again, we will reach out to you directly if we didn't get to yours. So the last question for today, how do you make the switch from these traditional KPIs where you're taking a technology first and switching to that truly people first, customer first approach?
Well, I think this is where we show the mech9.com website so people can contact us. If I was a sales guy, of course, that's what I would say, but you know what, it's not difficult to make the switch, and you can do that internally. It's really all about creating a culture and creating an environment where your team understands that you need to train people. You've got to give tools to your team to allow them to rally around the opportunity for training first and then looking at your technology. Going in and saying to a customer, hey, I understand you're having a problem here, and it looks like there's an issue here with the technology. Instead of saying, oh, I'll go fix that and all your people in the room can wait, why not say, hey, let me get you to a different room, and then I'll circle back and fix this one, you know, after we get you set up in the next place. It's just doing things like that that really do make a difference. And it's a team focus. You need to rally your team, and you need to get buy-in from your technology group that's the right thing. And you'll find over time that it will switch. It's not an overnight thing, but it is really important to work and make sure you've got buy-in from everybody.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Thank you to everyone who has dialed in and participated in today's webinar.
Everybody have a great day.